Coming up in our newscast tonight, U.S. Special Envoy Stephen Biegun says the agenda for the Pyongyang-Washington summit is set, but negotiations on working level will continue. Meanwhile, Vietnam's top diplomat arrives in North Korea to coordinate protocol related to the hotly anticipated event set to be held in Hanoi. A special graduation ceremony was held today to honor the young students that were killed during the country's worst maritime disaster. The ceremony was postponed as the search continued for several missing students. The South Korean government unveils new measures to drastically improve the nation's quality of life. Some $300 billion will be set aside for a 5-year plan that covers various sectors, including employment, education, and health. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Cha. For the first time, it's officially confirmed the agenda for the Pyongyang-Washington summit has been set. However, according to America's point man on North Korea, there are still a lot of negotiations to be done by working-level officials. Lee Ji-won has our top story.
North Korea and the U.S. were able to set their agenda for the upcoming summit between their leaders, and the next step of their negotiations is set to start in the next working-level meeting. This is according to U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun, who met with South Korean National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang and a delegation of South Korean lawmakers during their sit-down with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan in Washington on Monday. Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reported, citing the delegates, that Biegun said that Pyongyang and Washington set the agenda for their talks during their working-level meeting last week, with both sides having the chance to fully explain what they wanted. He added that the two sides will look to narrow their differences starting from their next round of talks. The U.S. has been demanding that North Korea take concrete denuclearization steps, including providing an inventory of its nuclear missile programs, while the North has been asking for sanctions relief and a declaration to end the 70-year-long Korean War. South Korea's presidential office had said the two sides will resume their talks in a third country in Asia next week. With only 2 weeks left until the second Pyongyang-Washington summit, the nuclear envoy said it'll be difficult to resolve all the obstacles ahead. But he was hopeful in saying that it's still possible if they can agree on the timeline for denuclearization. Biegun allegedly said his talks with his new counterpart Kim Hyok-chol, U.S. Affairs of the State Affairs Commission of North Korea, were productive and the atmosphere was good. He then added that it's a long road to normalize ties with North Korea, signing a peace treaty and establishing the foundation for economic prosperity on the Korean peninsula, but that the U.S. has chosen to work towards that, and that he hopes North Korea makes the right choice. Biegun also reportedly stressed how the Seoul-Washington Working Group has helped the situation and is maintaining the balance between fast-progressing inter-Korean exchanges and the denuclearization talks. Meanwhile, Moon Hee-sang and the South Korean lawmakers will meet with U.S. senators before leaving Washington on Friday. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
As the hotly anticipated summit is set to be held in Hanoi, Vietnam's foreign minister and senior diplomats visit North Korea to discuss protocol matters. They're also expected to talk about leader Kim Jong-un's possible state visit to the host country. Woo Jung-hee tells us more.
Vietnam's foreign minister plus a few other senior diplomats are in North Korea for a 3-day stay to hammer out protocol issues ahead of the North Korean leader's visit to Hanoi later this month. The country's foreign ministry announced through Twitter on Monday that Hanoi's foreign minister Phan Binh Minh is visiting the North from February 12th to 14th at the invitation of the North's foreign minister Ri Yong-ho. The delegation is believed to have arrived in Pyongyang Tuesday afternoon. Among the officials accompanying Minh is the protocol chief of Vietnam's foreign ministry. This suggests that the Vietnamese delegation's main talking point with Pyongyang will be inviting Kim Jong-un for a state visit. Before the venue for the Kim-Trump summit was determined, the Vietnamese government had recommended its capital, Hanoi, partially to have Kim Jong-un as a state guest. It'll be the first time for a North Korean leader to visit Vietnam in over 50 years. The late former North Korean leader Kim Il-sung, who's Kim Jong-un's grandfather, visited Hanoi 2 times in 1958 and 1964. So if a state visit does happen, then there will be a North Korea-Vietnam summit as well, before or after the one with the U.S. Alongside ironing out the details on that front, other matters will likely be on the table, such as the places Kim Jong-un will visit, where he'll stay, and which route he should take. The Vietnamese delegation might also pay a courtesy visit to Kim Jong-un. After this meeting in Pyongyang, the director of North Korea's State Affairs Commission, Kim Chang-sun, could make his way to Hanoi for a look around the venue, just like he did before the Singapore summit. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's top diplomat is expected to hold more talks with their American counterpart Mike Pompeo later this week. Kang Kyung-hwa will visit Poland for 2 days starting Wednesday to attend a ministerial-level meeting jointly hosted by Washington and Warsaw on the issues of peace in the Middle East and security cooperation. Seoul's foreign ministry is currently arranging the specific time and dates for the bilateral ministerial meetings with other participating countries, including the U.S. According to local diplomatic sources, the bilateral meeting with the U.S. could be held on Thursday. If that session is held, the duo are expected to further discuss necessary issues before the second Kim-Trump summit. Some 250 South Koreans crossed the border for a 2-day trip. That group is comprised of members of major civic groups, as well as lawmakers and figures related to inter-Korean economic cooperation. Meeting with their North Korean counterparts, the team plans to suggest deepening inter-Korean interactions and exchanges in various fields, such as enabling temple stay programs up north and holding a joint academic event for educators. Cooperation over the issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women will also be proposed. A government-conducted survey shows a growing number of students here in the nation have a more positive view of North Korea and unification compared to a year ago. Nearly half of them see Pyongyang as a partner and believe it's possible for the two sides to become one in less than a decade. Lee Min-sun zooms in on the changing perception.
The survey suggests that South Korean students have drastically changed their views on North Korea. Every year, the Ministries of Unification and Education ask students in elementary, middle, and high school what they think of the North. In 2017, 41% of them said it should be considered an enemy, but in 2018, that number shrank to 5.2%. Instead, 28.2% of them chose a newly created category of potential threat. About half of the students said they think North Korea is a partner to work with. The ministries asked the question to more than 87,000 students between last October and December and released the results on Tuesday. In both 2017 and 2018, 60% of students said the Koreas need to be unified, but last year they were more confident it will happen sooner rather than later. In 2018, most students said unification is possible in the next 6 to 10 years, while the year before, most of them said it will take 20 years or longer. The main reasons they said the Koreas need to unify is to lower the threat of war, because Koreans are one people, and to make the nation stronger. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
It's been around half a decade since a horrific ferry accident took more than 300 lives here in Korea. Most were high school students. Today, a special graduation ceremony was held to have the young victims posthumously awarded diplomas. Kim Mo-gyun takes us to the tearful scene.
3 years later than their peers, students of Tamwon High School who died in the Sewol-ho ferry disaster on April 16, 2014, have received an honorary graduation ceremony. A total of 250 students who lost their lives in the nation's biggest maritime disaster have finally received their honorary diplomas after their education was tragically cut short. The ceremony kicked off with a calling of the names of each student as their pictures were presented on the screen. As their names were announced, parents and siblings cried and shouted out the names of their children in despair.
There is nothing that can comfort us except for our children coming back to us. Many of us parents feel this way, and this is why many of the seats are vacant. But we pushed through with the ceremony for the safety and honor of our children.
There are many parents who are still traumatized from the disaster, and many of us are still hurting. I am afraid that my child will be forgotten as time passes.
More than 500 people gathered at the high school in Ansan City, including Education Minister Yoon Hye and Lee Jae-jung, the Superintendent of Education for Gyeonggi-do Province. There were several remembrance speeches, one of which was from a fellow student.
I could fill this letter with "I miss you" because that's what I really want to say, but today I will instead say congratulations. We will never forget all of you until we meet again.
Aside from those who directly knew the victims, other citizens also came to pay their respects, hoping that no such tragedy ever occurs again.
It breaks my heart to see many of the families in sorrow. I see a lot of students assisting the ceremony, and I hope that we all work hard for this young generation to live in a better society.
The graduation had been postponed since 2016 as the bereaved families refused to attend it until the bodies of several missing students were recovered. But despite 2 students still missing, the families this time requested for the ceremony to take place this year. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
The government plans to inject hundreds of billions of dollars to improve the nation's social security in areas including employment, education, and health. The hope is this will help improve quality of life and pull the nation up from the bottom of an OECD ranking. Cha Sang-mi outlines the 5-year roadmap for us.
The South Korean government has revealed its master plan to lift South Koreans' ranking in terms of quality of life by injecting nearly $300 billion for the nation's social security system. This comes as South Korea has long languished at the bottom among major advanced economies, despite its large economy faring well. The Ministry of Health and Welfare on Tuesday laid out its roadmap to increase the OECD ranking of people's quality of living from 28th in 2017 to 20th by 2023 and the global top 10 by 2040. The 5-year plan covers a range of sectors in society. These are the 4 major ones. In employment and education, the government aims to reduce the proportion of low-income workers from 22% to 15% by 2040 and waive tuition for high school students. This would benefit an estimated 1.5 million people or more. The government will also strive to reduce the poverty rate by strengthening public assistance and income security for working-age people. In the health sector, the aim over the next 20 years is to extend Koreans' healthy lifespan from 73 years to 78 years by strengthening health insurance and reducing medical costs to 1/3 of the current amount. Insurance will be expanded to cover for MRIs and ultrasounds. The government will also nearly double its social spending tailored to the stage of life people are in, and it will also build more national and public nursing and care homes. The plan will cost about $295 billion starting this year with a budget of $48 billion. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in chaired the 6th cabinet meeting of the year. The main talking point was a regulatory sandbox implemented in the nation for the very first time. He highlighted the significance of the project and his expectations for it.
규제 샌드박스는 혁신 경제의 실험장입니다. 새로운 기술과 서비스가 국민의 생명과 안전, 건강에 위해가 되지 않는 한 선허용 후규제의 원칙에 따라 마음껏 도전하고 새로운 시도를 해볼 수 있도록 기회를 열어주자는 것이 핵심입니다.
The meeting comes a day after the Trade Ministry announced its approval of regulatory exemption applications from 4 companies. The South Korean leader stressed government needs to be a strong supporter of local companies trying to innovate by leveraging what he calls the world's most advanced regulatory sandbox. Moon also urged the cabinet to promote the system so more companies can take advantage of the opportunity and the public better informed of its benefits. KDI's monthly evaluation of South Korea's economy is out. The state-run institute points out the conditions remain subdued. Kim Hye-sung breaks down the digits for us.
For the 4th consecutive month, the Korea Development Institute says the local economy is continuing to slow down. In its economic trends report for February, the KDI says on top of weak production, domestic demand and export growth are also slowing down. Overall production in all industries in December grew 0.3% on year, down from November's 0.6%. There was also a sharp increase in the manufacturing industry's inventory to sales ratio, which rose from 107% in October to 116% in December, marking the highest figure in 2 decades. On the demand side, retail sales grew 3% on year in December, higher than the 1% growth seen in November, but still short of 2018's annual average growth of 4.2%. Exports, the key driver of Korea's economy, fell for 2 consecutive months. After falling by 1% on year in December, exports dropped near 6% in January on weaker shipments of semiconductors and petrochemical goods, which decreased 23% and 5% respectively.
Production in manufacturing, services, and construction are all slowing down. On top of this, domestic demand and exports are weakening sharply under slowing global economy and trade. All aspects in the cycle of economic growth, production, demand, and investment are contracting.
The KDI says facilities investment remains weak, plunging 14.5% on year in December after falling 9% in November. It forecasts the Korean economy to grow 2.5% in 2019, lower than the 2.7% growth tallied in 2018, which was the slowest pace in 6 years. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Every year, the South Korean government appraises the value of land as a guide for administrative tasks like taxation. The results for 2019 are announced and prices are up quite a bit. Ko Ryuni help us look beyond the numbers.
Land in South Korea has gotten pricier this year, and it turns out that the pace of the increase was faster in areas already considered expensive. According to this year's appraisal by the Land Ministry, the average price has increased by 9.42% in 2019 compared to last year. This is faster than the increase in 2018 of 6.02% and marks the sharpest rise since 2008. The government raised the land prices the most in regions considered expensive. These are areas worth more than $17,000 per square meter. There, the average increase was more than 20%. Upping the appraisals is part of the government's efforts to use the tax system to curb soaring real estate prices and to regulate speculative investment in affluent districts. Breaking it down by major cities, land prices in Seoul rose the most by almost 14%, and in southern port city of Busan by more than 10%. The appraisal system directly affects people's daily lives because it determines the amount of property tax they have to pay. Others say this could negatively affect many tenants such as the self-employed, because the rise in land prices might lead to an increase in rent. Some experts say the revisions might hurt the overall economy by prompting many tenants to leave central parts of the cities because of high rent. Ko Ryuni, Arirang News.
Controversy surrounding 3 lawmakers of the Liberty Korea Party intensifies after they made disparaging remarks about an historic pro-democracy movement. The ruling and minor blocs are seeking to strip them of their parliamentary seat, while the main opposition vows to take measures of its own. Kim Min-ji has the latest from the National Assembly.
4 of South Korea's political parties have joined hands to push for the expulsion of 3 main opposition Liberty Korea Party lawmakers for making defamatory remarks related to the 1980 pro-democracy movement. The ruling Democratic Party and 3 minor opposition parties together filed a complaint on Tuesday to the Parliament's Special Committee on Ethics. Kim Jin-tae, Lee Jong-myung, and Kim Sun-rae came under fire after holding a public hearing last week with far-right political commentator Ji Man-won. Ji has long made claims that the demonstration was orchestrated by North Korean troops, something numerous investigations have proven false. Some of the lawmakers also made disparaging comments, calling the movement a riot and the protesters a monster group. The ruling party said the lawmakers distorted history and insulted those who fought for democracy, saying they won't get away with the situation easily. On May 18, 1980, the military launched a bloody crackdown on demonstrators in Gwangju, protesting against Chun Do-hwan, who took power in a military coup, killing around 200 people.
If the Liberty Korea Party does not take any action that is generally considered acceptable, we will join forces with minor opposition parties to launch a nationwide campaign to have the 3 lawmakers removed.
With the crisis getting out of hand, the Liberty Korea Party set out to defuse the situation. the party's interim leader made a public apology, saying that the party itself will seek to carry out punitive measures against the lawmakers that made the inappropriate remarks. He said the lawmakers will be referred to the party's ethics body.
I apologize to the families of those who lost their lives during the movement and to the people of Gwangju on behalf of our party. Our internal probe showed that groundless claims were made at the hearing and that some of our lawmakers made inappropriate remarks.
Whether this will be enough to calm the controversy remains to be seen. The ruling party and minor opposition parties said they will revise related bills to impose hefty punishments for those that make disparaging comments regarding the pro-democracy movement or distort history. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
A former Seoul mayor announced his running for the leadership of the main opposition Liberty Korea Party, despite claiming a week ago that he would boycott the race. Oh Se-hoon was once the sixth candidate to announce that they would not throw their hat in the ring to protest against the LKP's decision not to postpone its national convention set for February 27th. The candidates had asked for the changes to avoid a clash with the second Pyongyang-Washington summit, which starts on the same date. Today was the deadline, and it is set to be a three-way race between Oh, former Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-an, and lawmaker Kim Jin-tae, who is under fire for making controversial remarks about the 1980 Gwangju pro-democracy movement. A day after the former Supreme Court Chief Yang Sing-tae is indicted, the sitting Chief Justice issued an apology. Kim Yong-soo, who vowed to deliver further punishment to judges involved in the power abuse scandal. Choi Si-young shares with us his remarks.
In a statement released on Tuesday, the sitting Supreme Court Chief Kim Myung-soo said he is sorry that the former head of the judiciary, Yang Sing-tae, is now in trial over 47 counts of alleged crimes. The most notable charges include interference in highly sensitive trials, such as the issue of Japan's forced labor of Korean nationals during World War II, in order to achieve his long-envisioned plan of establishing a separate court of appeals and creating a blacklist of judges who oppose his plan. Other judges have been implicated in Yang's scandal, and the sitting Supreme Court chief said he will deliver punishments on them once prosecutors wrap their investigations at the end of this month. Disciplinary actions could include barring the judges from ruling. Two other former Supreme Court justices, Park Byung-dae and Ko Young-han, were indicted as Yang's accomplices on Monday. But in Kim's statement of apology, he urged the public not to mistrust every ruling that had been made by the court that the judges rule over. Kim said we should all work together not to repeat the same mistakes of the past. He said one way is to overhaul structural changes that put more responsibility to judges and change their closed-door bureaucracy more open to criticisms outside. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
South Korean students' job preferences are changing. However, their parents seem to want their children to choose what's considered traditional career paths, with civil service topping the chart. Kim Da-mi has the full story.
South Korean parents see civil service as the most desirable career for their children. According to a survey published by local job portal Saramin on Monday, civil service has topped the chart for the second year in a row this year. In a survey of 625 workers here in South Korea, around 31% said civil service was their preferred choice for their children's career. It was followed by healthcare, law, business, and education. Such preferences come from the desire for stable jobs over careers that provide other opportunities. In addition, around 66% of parents who want their children to work in the same field as them are civil servants. On the other hand, 62% of all respondents said they're against their children working in the same field, with low salary and high stress the main reasons given. South Korean students' career preferences are changing, with YouTuber making last year's top 10 dream jobs for elementary school students, but parents still seem to prefer traditional jobs for their children. While students have stated passion and confidence in the field as the top reasons to work in their desirable areas, parents said they value their children's interests and job stability. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Mock at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, once again, the mercury rises and the dust pollution returns.
Yes, Daniel, almost everywhere in the country, they are from high levels of ultrafine dust today. Now, the capital's air was somewhat refreshed by northerly winds, but as it did, the dust accumulated over in the southern regions. The dust concentrations will continue until tomorrow, so keep your masks handy. Now, we are going to have a nice Wednesday afternoon, though. A warm front will keep the temperatures high tomorrow, especially over in the southern regions. And also the breezy winds will help the sky clear. And until then, apart from the southern regions, it will mostly be freezing morning. In fact, it's going to be colder than today, with Seoul beginning at -5°C. And the daily highs in Seoul will reach up to 2 degrees, while temperatures in the southern regions will linger between 7 and 10 degrees. Now, there won't be big changes in the thermometer in the meantime, but widespread rain is expected over on Friday. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could pack into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.